Hi, this is Craig Severance from the Zero Energy Channel. Come join us as we work to address the challenge of moving toward a world with zero energy from fossil fuels. This is a little video on how to design your tiny house, which is it's not going to be done in a day. In fact, it will probably take and should take the longest period of time in the entire process is to think through your ideas, what you need, how you're going to make things fit, what sort of design ideas you really like. So the question is, where do you start? And laid out here on the table, here are some of the evidence of the design processes that we've been involved in for the last actually about 3 years with my wife and all. You could see here, there, if you just do a search on YouTube, and you know, where this is a public page in YouTube, so I'm not really trying to promote any particular websites, although they have some featured on my own channel that I think are pretty good. But you know, you'll see their page after page after page of YouTube videos on people that have done tiny houses, people that are selling tiny houses, people that are designing tiny houses. And the great thing about this is it's visual and it's alive, and you probably began this process or heard about tiny houses through YouTube, and I highly recommend that you spend a lot of time at this. We've literally watched dozens of YouTube videos on tiny houses, and you think you got it down, and then you see somebody has come up with a really creative idea. They say, oh, that solves that problem. So it's going to be, you know, weeks and months of effort, maybe a couple a night for a couple a week, whatever you feel comfortable with, depending on how passionate you are with this. Watching YouTube videos on tiny houses, you're going to get a lot of ideas. You notice next to that is my notepad, because you should jot down notes from the ones that you think are a good idea. I have pages of notes from the YouTube videos. That's I think one of the very first things. Get an idea in your mind, physically, visually, what this is all about. You're talking about a whole new field. You know, the way our own founding fathers expressed it, the government that governs least, it governs best, because it allows the process of spontaneous organization of society, the creative process that human beings are so good at, to flourish. And if you don't clamp it down with lots of rules about you can't do this, you have to do that, and this is a full expression of that creative process, because people have been doing this without the extreme limitations of building codes, and yet they're still doing a wonderful job. So that's a philosophical statement about what's happening here, but it is a very good expression of the spontaneous organization of society that is happening before our eyes. So get some ideas, and then you need to do some reading and maybe go to a workshop. The founder of the movement essentially is Jay Schaefer with Tumbleweeds Tiny House Company. They run workshops. We've gone to their 2-day workshop. You should buy books, every book you can. We bought the Tiny House Design and Construction book, which is very detailed. I highly recommend it. If you're thinking of renewable power, you want to look at some books like the Renewable Energy Handbook. Some Compact Cabins is an older book before the tiny house per se movement, but there's a lot of good ideas there. Then you're going to start unleashing your own ideas. One of the things that you want to really do is, you'll see over here is a measuring tape and little cutouts from graph paper were actually what finally helped us to finalize a design, were the cutouts, because it gives you the freedom to move those little cutouts, like this refrigerator is going to be this big, and if you want a compact washing machine, you have to figure out where can it fit. You've got your shower, You know, some of our cutouts were for a shower pan, the recliner. My wife wanted to see if we could fit her piano, believe it or not. We had some plans that did that. Figure out what's a good wood stove and how big a space it takes if you're going to heat with wood. There actually are some very small ones now. I recommend the first step, when you start to actually draw floor plans, you'll see here, we went through a lot of them. My wife would throw out her ideas on just scratch pads, notepads, you know, how the layout might look out. And this is sort of our iterations. I saved pretty much everything. And another one of hers, and another very rough one, and another very rough one, and then I would try to, and then she took it onto graph paper, and we refined more of a one onto graph paper. You'll see that we gave up on designs and threw out the ideas and came up with totally different ideas. Here's one of our more detailed ones that involved a Murphy bed, so we wouldn't be sleeping in a loft. That was one idea. These are more recent ones. Graph paper is highly flexible, and it actually doesn't take very long to lay these out once you get the hang of it, which is what you want. You want to play things out quickly and see if they work, and then you use your eraser. That's see the pencil, the mechanical pencil with a really good eraser there. You're going to erase things a lot, and you're going to play around with the little scraps of paper that are cut out for the things that you're trying to fit into this box. What Dan Loesch points out in his book, The Tiny House Design and Construction Guide, you'll notice that from the dozens and dozens of YouTube videos and the dozens of different designs, everybody has different designs for their tiny houses based upon their needs and their aesthetic design preferences. But he points out that, you know, you basically have a certain limited space here to work with, and as a result, you're talking 8.5 feet wide by, you know, 18 or 20, or I think the largest I've seen is 24 foot long. But as a result of the limitations on the design, there have been certain types of exterior framing designs that are pretty standardized now, and people are generally tending to work within those, except for creative artists who have amazing skills to create curved roofs and so forth. But for the most of us, we're going to be working within a pretty set design that actually works for a do-it-yourselfer to build. You can gather a lot of ideas off of those. There are certain patterns, and you can learn from what other people have done that seems to work best. And for instance, we were originally working with a bathroom across from the kitchenette, and we finally ended up with a bathroom at the end, at the back, so avoid hallways. So that's another point he makes, is you want to avoid spaces that are nothing more than people walking through them, which you'll find even in a tiny house. So you don't feel ashamed if you go through iteration after iteration and throw out idea until you finally come up with something. That's the normal process. That's floor plan. That's just the basic framework and where you're going to fit things. Don't forget, you also have to have a way to heat the house, a way to have the water system work, a hot water system, possibly a way to cool the house. You're going to have lighting, and you're going to have electrical needs. If you're off-grid, that's going to be a very involved process, trying to figure out our electrical consumption and how many kilowatt hours we would love to have, and then you start paring down because you can't. And the other thing too, you want to look at what actual appliances you're going to use and what are their exact design specifications. Start looking up things that other people are using or highly recommended, like the Nature's Head composting toilet, and we know the exact specifications of it. the design specs on a Sunfrost refrigerator. That's one of the hardest things to fit in, but you start throwing things in that, like any large item like a full-size refrigerator, and you're going to automatically be losing 2 or 3 smaller items, and then you're going to have to be making the process as you design as to what's really the most important to you. And then you're going to be getting into finding out, so like I said, find the specs on things that you might want, like a washing machine. There are some that are typically like 24 inches for RV washers. You have to decide if that's really important to you. We found out that we took a few big things in and we don't have room for a dryer and there's no power for a dryer, so you have to find solutions. Like, we're looking at some drying racks for the winter. We're going to have, of course, a clothesline outside for most months of the year, but sometimes it's just going to be too cold to dry clothes outside. And then, of course, you're going to be looking for some ways to make the space more beautiful, like some of these farm sinks that are just absolutely gorgeous, and they can go outside the box. As you see, this is going outside the dimensions of the countertops. Some nice thinking there. And then one of the biggest design considerations is where we're going to be having the tiny house, and that may change your views. You may have to put some windows in and orientation in that you hadn't planned based upon where you end up being. The design process gets really dynamic for a long time until you think you finally got it, and that's why I say it's really good to just be working with pencil and an eraser and some pieces of paper you can start over on, a new piece of graph paper. And by the way, we always use the bigger ones. The tiny houses still need big pieces of graph paper. When you think you finally got it down, then and only then would I recommend using something like the free Google SketchUp program, which we're now trying to work with, and we are working with, and it's very powerful. For instance, this is what we're working on now, is the actual very specific dimensions laid out in Google SketchUp for different layers of our tiny house, and we're rolling up to the working on the floor sheathing right now. We've got the blue layer is how the trailer turned out with our extensions, and we did that very precisely. And you'll know, you can't see it here, but the trailer has the extensions. See our trailer video to support the full dimensions of the house. And then there are floor joists, and you work up from there, and you add layers, and you can see them separately or make them disappear, and you can get very precise with this to see how the 3D design turns out. But this is extremely time consuming, very meticulous. You have to already pretty much know what you're going to do before you go to this step. So don't start here, or you'll get so committed by how long it took to draw it in SketchUp that you may not want to change your idea even if you come up with a better idea. So this is sort of the final step. We'll have another video on our perspective on the SketchUp program, but this should help you get started and let your free energy of your creativity flow. That's the main point here. You'll keep changing things, and then when you finally got it, put it down.
Hello, my name is Eric. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up down below. Also, if you want to subscribe, that's good too. Join us on the Zero Energy channel.